Okay, so we are going to start on page 78. We're going to start with Ois Gimel, letter 3, number 3, in the 5th chapter of the first part of Derech HaShem. Right, and that's the 5th chapter is the last chapter of this first part. Okay, so where are we? So this chapter describes the creation, the entire creation in more detail. All right, so we talked about that the creation is divided into two halves, the physical and the spiritual. He told us that there's this creature called Shadim, which is kind of neither here nor there. Okay, and then he focused on the humans. The humans are unique, that they have a neshama, and they're a unique fusion of physical and spiritual. And then he made this. So he says, okay, physical things, we basically have a general understanding of what laws they are governed by. But spiritual things, we don't really know what these things are. What's a spiritual thing? I mean, people are accustomed. Again, it really kind of grates on my spine. People are accustomed to throw like words like soul and spirituality, like as if they know what they're talking about, and really we don't know what they're talking about. But we have a Messiah, we follow a certain tradition, meaning we have certain concepts, certain general direction of how to address these terms, and that's what he says we're going to use. And the main two things that he talks about in Ois Beis, in the previous Ois that we discussed, was that you have to understand that for every physical things that exist, there must exist a spiritual counterpart. And that spiritual counterpart, he broke it down into two paragraphs. One paragraph is what he calls the koiches. If you remember, there is something called the transcendental forces. The force is kind of the blueprint of creation. So any physical thing or any physical event that occurs, or anything that happens in this world that is observed, must have originated in those spiritual forces, the transcendental forces. And then he said that also everything that exists and anything that occurs also must have a malach, must have an angel that kind of promotes it and makes it happen. Okay, those are the two things that we learned in the previous chapter. Well, not chapter, paragraph. Okay, so now let's see. Ois Gimel. V'amnam, however, ikar mitzius ha'olam. This is another really kind of a Copernican revolution for a Jew, meaning that really turns the world upside down, is that we have to understand that the Iker Mitzius, the main existence, is not down here, but rather up there in those forces. Right? It's not that the lower world governs the upper world, as we tend to think, because we only see the lower world. It's the opposite. It's really the upper world that governs the lower world. Okay? But with Toldois Masha later, as we're going to see hopefully soon, he's going to qualify that. There is a way for the lower world to govern the upper world too, but Iker Mitzius, the primary existence of anything that exists, is in those upper transcendental forces. V'toldois mashabahem, and the result of what exists in those upper forces, hu mashabigashmim hashrolim, is what we see in the physical lower world. V'zeh bein mashamitchilas, bein mashamischadash b'schalfus hazmanim, and that applies equally to what was originally when things were kind of put into effect, and also everything that continues to exist. Meaning, I'm not sure how far to take this idea, but what he's saying here is that you could have perhaps suggested that once something happens in the transcendental forces, then there's something happens in the physical counterpart, and then it rolls on its own, in the physical world, not connected to those transcendental forces. He's saying no, that's not true. Everything, there's a constant connection. Absolutely everything that continues to be brought into existence, every event that occurs, it must have to have a spiritual counterpart in the transcendental forces. Okay, that whatever was originally created from those transcendental forces, and according to arrangements that they were arranged, and the confines that they were confined, and so was everything that continued to exist afterwards, according to the laws of, I don't know how to say it, but the laws of, how does he say it? He doesn't translate it, but the laws of the I don't say nature, he doesn't say nature, but there's the laws of what he called Hishtalshlus. Hishtalshlus means progression, right? The process. So whatever the law of this progression that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up, so it continues to follow that progression. So whatever is renewed in the forces as a result of that Hishtalshlus, and is renewed, not renewed really, made new in those forces. So that thing also becomes new in the lower worlds. Again, the language here is not so clear to me. So the existence, the mitzias, hamatzav means the state, the situation, v'haseder, and the order, v'chol shar ha'havchonos b'koiches, and all other elements of the forces, hem kifi ma sheshayach b'hem lefi amitas enyonim, is what is appropriate to their nature. והמציאות והסדר וכל שאר המקרים ובשפולים משתלשל ונעתק למה ששייך בהם לפי אמיתות עניינם. I think the last part points out that doesn't mean, again, I think you mentioned this before, that again, those are spiritual forces, these are physical beings. That doesn't mean that the translation is exactly one-to-one. The translation is not one-to-one. There is something that's appropriate according to the laws and the nature of the spiritual forces, and that has its ramifications for the physical beings according to their laws and their status. So just because you see something in the spiritual force, it doesn't mean you're going to see it exactly that same way in the physical reality, because they're different currencies. Okay, so however that works, the exchange rate, that's a whole separate question. Okay, but the main point is that the source of everything that exists. So besides knowing that, hey, there's a spiritual counterpart for every physical thing or event, we also need to know that the origin of everything is over there. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's continue. So Oiz Dalet. So that's the next letter. V'hina lefi shoyrish zeh. So therefore, according to this principle, shoyrish, this root, tchilas kol ha'havayos, the beginning of all that happens, all that exists, lemaila b'koiches elyonim, is up above in those transcendental forces. V'soifam, and the end result, lemata b'shvolim, is down here in the lower spheres. And so to the beginning of anything that is made new, Lemaila is also up above, V'soifim Lamata is also down below. Amnam, however, Prat Echad Yesh Yotz Min HaKal Hazeh, there is one aspect which is acceptance to this rule. V'hu ma shenegeh leVchiras ha'adam. That is what is related to the freedom of choice of man. Right? Kekivon. Now we're going to basically have this interesting question. We're going to boil down. There's like the famous story that they say. I remember if it was Reb Shlomo Zalman or which tzaddik they talk about. The story is that that when they got married, they made a deal. Him and his wife made a deal that she's going to be the boss of everything that's physical. That's that's part of the gashmius of the household, and he's going to be the boss of everything that is the spiritual part of the household. And this way, they won't have to have any debates or arguments. The problem is they only had one argument, right? What's spiritual and what's physical, right? So we're gonna basically, it's gonna come down to this question, I think, for us, because on one hand we say, Oh, parnasa is predestined, right? Your parnasa is predestined, it's part of your mazel, it's predestined. On the other hand, we're going to say, one second, but everything that I do, I get judged on Rosh Hashanah, and it's all totally, it's on in my bechira, in my free will. If I was a good boy this year, so I'm going to get the reward. If I wasn't a good boy, I'm not going to get reward. So which one is it? Is it predestined, or is it up to my good behavior? Which one is it? Is it is it dependent on me, or is it not dependent on me? Right? So it's going to be the same question. We have going to have one argument. What is included in my bechira and what's not included in my bechira. Okay.
It can be determined for the year, but you're working on next year budget. So.
Well, let's see. Let's see. Yeah. But right now, she told us again that everything originates from those spiritual forces. So that's a top-down approach, right? As those forces are decided, so to everything else, the domino effect happens. But now he tells us something else. He tells us there's a yotz min haklal, there is an exception to this rule, which pertains to the freedom of choice. Since HaKadosh Baruch Hu desired that there should be a need for a person, the ability, for a person to choose, whatever he wants, min hatoiv min hara, whether it be good or whether it be evil, right? As we said before in the previous chapter, in a couple of chapters ago, that there has to be a way for a person to choose good and to choose bad, and he has to have the freedom to do so. So therefore Hashem made him be independent or not dependent on anyone outside of him in this respect, right? So in this way we are similar. If you remember from our first chapter about the 6 things that we talked about, the nature of God, one of the things was that he is independent. He's not dependent on another entity. So human beings, which were created in Tzelem Elokim, which were created in the image of God, this one aspect we have that is very similar to God is that we have this freedom of choice, that we are not dependent on another entity for some of our choices. Not only are we not dependent on other beings for our choices, for not only that, the other beings are kind of dependent on us, meaning he says nosan loy koyach, Hashem gave us the power liyos meniya to cause an impact l'olam atzmai, to the world itself, v'livri yosef, and to its creations, kifi ma sheyivcher b'cheftzai, as we choose in our action, right? And I said this before in the previous chapter. We talked about some aspects of man's role in this world, right? He talked about Torah, he talked about Ahava and Yira and mitzvahs, the basic ideas of what drives a person's avodah. He said over there, words like, hold on. So he says, "V'chol eile ha'inyonim," and in all of these matters, loy dai. It's not enough. Mashikoinu ha'odam be'atzmai ma'ilo shlemus. It's not that a person only for himself acquires elevation and perfection. Ela shemitzius abriya kulo bechlolo befroto, that the entire existence, in general and in particular, misalo mishtalim, is also raised up and perfected. Right. So he told us that Hashem made it so that based on our freedom of choice, we have the ability to influence the entire creation. As we go up, we take the entire creation with us, and as we go down, we take the entire creation with us. So he's repeating this idea here, is that not only the freedom of choice gives us the ability to choose for ourselves, but our choices have ramifications for the entire creation, right? Oh, so now we're going to have an obvious problem. We have 2 systems fighting against each other. We have one system that says, hey, these are the forces, this is what's happening in this world, and boom, 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 and domino effect in the lower places. And yet, now, 1 second, we have this guy over here on the bottom whose freedom of choice affects the entire creation, which fights, or may fight, with those forces. V'nimtzu, that's what he's saying. V'nimtzu, so it's going to come out, b'oilam, that there exists in this world shtei tnuos, klolios, havkios, that there are these two movements, two general movements that are opposite. Ha'achas tivis, one is of nature, muchrachas, that is, muchrachas means like absolute, it's, it's forced, I don't know how to say it, indeterministic, okay, indeterministic, okay, v'hashniya bechiris, and the second one, no, I'm sorry, that's wrong. He doesn't translate Muhammad. Just the opposite. It's deterministic. Deterministic. V'hashniya bechiris, and the other one is freedom of choice based, which is indeterministic. Ha'achas melmala lamata. One is going from top down. V'hashniya melmata lamala, and the other one goes from bottom up. Hamuchrachas hi hatnua. The deterministic one is the impact, which is impact that Hashem isnoyayim hashafoli me'akoyches elyonim. These are the influence of the lower ones by the upper ones. V'hinehi milmala lamata, and that's the one from the top down. V'abichiris, and the one that's dependent on freedom of choice. This is what a person has an impact through his freedom of will. Good. Now, what he impacts through his freedom of choice, he only impacts the things that are gashmis, right? Should I drink this coffee or not? Okay, I'll drink this coffee. So I just caused a physical effect in this world, right? I consumed some coffee and I caused a physical effect in this world. So ki ha'odam gashmi, because a person is a physical creature, umasav gashmi, and his actions are physical. Aval mipnei hakesher v'hitztarfus hanimtzam ben hakoyches elyonim v'gashmi, but since there is a kesher, there is a knot, and there is a connection between the forces that are spiritual and the bodies or the creatures that are physical. Hine bisnoyeya hagashmi, through the movement of the physical, yagia behemshech ispilus alakoycha elyon shel. There was going to be like a domino effect on, like I'm pulling on the rope, and there's going to be a domino effect on the forces that are above, right? So if there is this force that's connected to this coffee cup, so when I drink it and I make less coffee in the world, somewhere up there, there's a bell that goes off and it says that there has to be a change that occurs. So hefech hativis hamuchrachas, and that's the opposite of the natural law, which is deterministic shezacharna, that we mentioned. Good. So we have a constant conflict of things that are predetermined versus things that are not determined. Okay? Good. V'ulam tzarich shiteda. Now, however, you should know, ki gam ha'odam atzmoi, that the person himself ein kol masav bechirim. Hold on, not every action that a person takes is an action that is truly free. Aval yesh mehem shiyu mitzad bechirosa. There are those that are dependent on his pure will. V'yesh acherim, but then there are others sheyisoviv lehem mitzad gzeir elyoina, that he is caused to do as a result of Hashem's decree, l'schoroi or l'onshoy, whether it is for his schar or for his punishment. That will be explained later in its proper place, right? So that's the next section that talks about Hashgacha, Hashem's providence. In the aspects that he is pulled after the Gzeira, the decree that was decreed on him, so then he becomes as other parts of the world, that he's being kind of dragged from top to bottom. As he is impacted by these forces, right? So meaning, if Hashem decreed, okay, this guy is going to be poor this year, let's say, So that's it. There's nothing he can do about that. He's not. Well, I don't know if nothing he can do about that. But right now, in his status quo is he's being punished with poverty, and he's gonna run through it. Right? It doesn't make a difference if he chooses business A to go into, a business B to go into, a business C to go into. He's going to, well, either one of those businesses are going to fail. But right, so in that decision, he's going to be completely deterministic. However, other decisions that are still left to his will, right? Then the movement will go back from bottom up. Good. Good. All right, let's continue. Yeah, so far so good? So far so good. So, this goes back. We can ask questions. Just had this discussion with somebody to what, this is also bothers me a lot about Ludi, especially Russian people, it's not, life is much more fluid than people realize. We have so much depends on our choices. So just because we are predestined for A, and looks like, let's say you read the stars, and let's say it says in the stars A is going to happen to me, but you don't know at which point A is supposed to happen to me. Is it based on my choice or it's not based on my choice? Well, I have no idea what's left within my realm of possibilities, what's not. So if anything, it's possible to, again, but I don't know how these things work, but it's possible once we accept something to be true, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then we kind of gear our choices to fit what we expect to happen, and then of course, see, I knew it, of course, I told you this is what's going to happen. And so it's our choices that caused us to lead us to the same end result that we thought was gonna, it's predetermined, even though really it wasn't predetermined. So again, I think reality is much more fluid and dynamic, and and so we should not prejudge the outcome of things, but do our best under the circumstances and see what comes out. That's number one. Number two is, again, the question of hishtadlus versus betochen. I think it's a very difficult question, because you never know where your hishtadlus kind of supposed to end, because I shouldn't say that, meaning
what else there is Yosef, like Angela, and he relied on it.
Right.
Yeah. So he got extra 2 years for that.
Right, but it's possible again. So we see that hishtadlus may depend on the person's level also. Yeah. That a person, right? Yosef's meaning for what for him was too much hishtadlus. For us, maybe would have been not enough hishtadlus.
But the concept is like he has one, but his action goes. Lack of bidachon is.
Right. Okay, good. All right, Ois Hey, number 5. V'hinei sidei ha'odem baruch hu, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu arranged, shekol ha'inyonim, that all of the aspects, asher tipol behem bechirosei shel odem, upon which falls the choice of man, yegiyu lehaniya betnu ha'bechiris es ha'koichos ha'heim. So through their freedom of choice, Hashem's person's freedom of choice, he impacts not just the physical things, but also the very transcendental forces themselves. In as much impact that a human being that Hashem gave the person to affect. Meaning, it's possible, again, when Moshe Rabbeinu does something, he hits a rock, so the impact on those forces is tremendous. When I hit something, the impact may be smaller. V'hainu ki lo masav levadom yaniyum ela afilu diburoi. But furthermore, not only are his actions will influence these forces, but afilu diburoi, but even a person's speech, v'afilu machshavtoi, and even a person's machshav, a person's thought. Ach shira tnuah v'madrega. However, the measure, right, the shear, the measure, the amount of influence, right, or the level of influence, will be only in as much as Hashem allowed this to happen. So sometimes it's possible that machshava will influence less than the ma'isa, because we say, the ikar is the ma'isa, the action is the ikar thing, because like we said, it really begins, the bechira starts with my choices, and my choices begin kind of in the physical world. But at the same time, we understand also that we are a neshama, and therefore our neshama has roots in the in the spheres that are very high. And so through our neshama, we can really wreak havoc, so to speak, in the spiritual realm, and then the result on the world can be tremendous. Ve'amnam. So okay, that's it. That was this for this small, powerful letter, that a person that a person's impact is limited and set forth by God through his speech, thought, and action. So it could be more, it could be less. We don't really know exactly how much does each person and each deed influences. Okay, number 6. Ve'amnam achar hatanua habechiris. However, also you have to understand that once you made a choice, and the impact was was let go into the world. It now also starts a chain of events of deterministic nature. Because since a person's through his freedom of choice, he had impact on those forces mitzad ha'adam, from the side, the side of the rope that man holds on to. So then those forces will in turn, right, have the domino effect as usual. Good. You have to understand that obviously there are many details and many laws that govern these systems, according to the decree that Hashem decreed, in the depth of His counsel, as was fit for the creation. The measure of these things is immensely great, whether from the effect that a person has on the forces, whether we're looking from the domino effect from the forces of these transcendental forces upon the lower things, right? There are so many details and particulars that it's impossible basically to go into everything. And according to these great, deep secrets, basically the entire hanhaga, the entire way Hashem guides the world rests on these two systems, b'chol ma shehoya v'shehiyah, and everything that was and everything that will be. Okay. Good. Okay, so let's just start. So the next section is almost wholly independent, but basically so far, okay, so there's two laws of nature. There's nature of freedom of choice. There's a nature of nature, right? But where does good and evil fit into this world? And what is evil? And how does it fit into this puzzle? That's what the rest of this chapter is going to be about. So let's just start it off, and we'll continue next time. V'hinei, and behold, since Hashem decreed that there should exist in the world and elements of good and elements of evil. As we mentioned, so just like we said that everything that exists in the lower worlds must originate, must take its place in the higher realms, right? In those forces. So then we must conclude that forces of evil also have to find their start, their origin in those forces as well. Now that's tough. How can you possibly, those forces are spiritual. They're supposed to be, the entire fundamental, blueprint of creation. You're telling me that there's evil in those forces. Like, how do you exactly put it all together? So let's see what he does. So, but based on his formula, the origin of evil must be over there somewhere. And then everything then stems out, branches out from those forces to the lower ones. So Sidro Chachmoso Yisborach as HaKoichos HaNivdolim Shroshei HaNivroim Shezacharnu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu arranged that these transcendental forces are the roots of everything that's created, as we mentioned. Beseder ubetchuna, in their order and in their nature, sheyipol behem, kefi ma sheshayach behem tikun v'kilkul, that there should exist in them what he calls tikkun and kilkul, right? Fixing and destruction, right? Rectification and damage, okay? Rectification and damage. V'hainu sheyimotzi b'hem matzav toiv v'loi toiv. So, in other words, that these forces can exist in two states. They can exist in a state of good, and or a state of rectification, let's call it, and they can exist in a state that's not so good, which is a damaged state. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So, v'amitas tuv hamatzav yiyeh b'hachono li'or ponav. And how do you decide whether it's in a good state or not in a good state? And as we said before, that everything, so in the previous chapter, he told us that the entire avodah, the entire service of man, can be boiled down to two things. If he's doing the right thing, then he creates illumination, right? Ha'oras ponav, what he calls the coming closer to God creates godliness, and we call that illumination. When you're distancing yourself from God, so then you call that darkness. We call that lack of illumination, lack of godliness, right? So even though there are many avenues and many roads to create it, but everything can be boiled down to kind of plus and minus. Plus is illumination, minus is the opposite, darkness. So now he's bringing that back over here, and he's saying the same thing works in the forces as well. If they are good conductors of God's light, so then they're existing in a state of illumination, in a state of good. If they're not, if there's some kind of damage, so that means that there's some lack of conductivity of godliness, so that will become kind of the source for everything that's evil as it goes down through the domino effect.
But then put an evil on personal level or general?
Right now, I think he's talking about on general level, but it's all interconnected. The macro and the it starts in the macro, and then the domino effect brings it down to the micro.
It's good for someone, it's bad for the other one.
Okay, but that's not. I don't think he's discussing that. That's already comes to mathematics and calculations and whatnot. But just in general, how does the whole how does it get into the entire creation?
Okay.
Good. So v'amitas tu v'matzav ha'iyeh. So the goodness of this state will depend sheyeh b'achona li'or b'or ponav yisborach. That it's going to be ready to accept the light of Hashem v'yoyer lohem, and then it will translate that light. V'havko, and the opposite of that, shetechzer me'em ha'achona hazois, that it's going to be missing this ability to accept this light, v'yisale mehem, and will be hidden from it. and the light will be hidden from them. And the result is that if there's goodness, so then it's going to result, the domino effect will also be good. And then if there is lack of light, the domino effect will also be negative. Okay, let's stop here. I think that's a good place. Right. So, so this last point is saying that so this is always. We're gonna have to drill much deeper into this. Generally speaking, right? We talk ruchnius and gashmius. So we assume evil is gashmius, right? Like just when we talk, we says, "Oh, that's gashmius," right? Mm-hmm. Gashmius is not good. Gashmius is evil. No. When a person does something bad, we call it gashmius. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes or no?
No.
No.
Yeah. You mean it goes away from HaShem? You mean it's
like we say, like if somebody's, I don't know, let's say, I don't know what he's doing. He's doing some action that is not becoming. I don't know. We look at it as it's gashmius. Mm-hmm. You know, and when we think of somebody growing, we say he's becoming more ruchnius, right?
Yeah, yes.
So we assume, I think generally speaking, that evil is associated with gashmius, and good is associated with ruchnius.
Okay.
Right? But now he's saying that evil must originate in the forces, these transcendental forces, which is the highest levels of ruchnius that exist, right? So is evil ruchnius or is evil gashmius?
Someone says that the evil is actually absence. It's not better, it's just absence of good. That's the evil. So by itself, it's like darkness is darkness. There was darkness is absence of light, but there is a darkness in the darkness.
All right.
So it's
all right. So right. So could be gashmius is just what we call, anything that's limited, and anything that's limited is the opposite of godliness. And so, okay. So again, we're gonna have to drill this down to better understanding of good and evil and how it fits into this picture. Okay. All right, good.